All right, we're at it again, guys. Another episode of the weekly daily podcast. Thanks for tuning in. It's you know what? I'll be honest with you guys. Didn't really want to record today. I've been putting it off. I Here's the deal. It's not that I don't want to put out a banger of a podcast. It's that I've been eating way too late, and when you eat late, just waking up, my body's all out of whack. It's a whole scheduling thing that I just got to get better at. But yeah, it's good to be here. I've been going to bed on the weekends. I'm getting home from shows, and I've been going to bed at like 1 and eating at like midnight. And then you just wake up lethargic, and it's really obnoxious. But what can you do? I got to change it up. Got to get in a healthier routine. I'm trying. I'm trying to bring the energy. I had a couple cups of coffee, which I'm already up from 1 to 2 cups. I'm a weekend of drinking coffee, and here we are. But yeah, good to be here. It's been a good week. Yesterday was a nice warm day. It's been cold. It's been back and forth between typical Denver weather. You know, here I am starting a podcast talking about the weather again. But you guys get it. It's good though. I've been just procrastinating this morning. It's not even the morning anymore. It's 12:05, just past noon. I finally mustered the energy to do it. I got a tea, Slippery Elm throat coat tea. I've had my coffee. I ate a bag of chips and guacamole for my first meal of the day. Was it a good idea? No, it wasn't. But what can you do? What can you do? Been scrolling through Instagram more than I should be, per usual. I For some reason I have a bunch of parkour videos in my algorithm, which look, do I like parkour? No, I don't know why it's in there. It's one of those weird things that slips through the cracks in your algorithm. Like another weird thing I have is people like eating crabs and fish. Like just they're like on the boat and they're just taking full bites out of crab or whatever. And it's like a weird ASMR. I don't know what it is. But I had the chiropractor thing for a while where I still have it a little bit, but it's for pets. There's this one guy who like he's a chiropractor for pets. He's got like a pit bull that he cracks its back, and I'm like, yo, that's first off, that is risky. I'd be very scared to do that. Secondly, who, how much money you got to have to be like, yeah, my dog. I go for a monthly chiropractor check. That's big money. I'm at the point now where like a pet would truly cut into my savings. I'm like, oh, $150 a month. That's money I'm not willing to take out of my budget. And then you got these people who are like, yeah, they've spent more money on a pet than they would a child. Which for some people, if you don't have children, I don't know. I'm going on a tangent already. But yeah, the videos, like I said, I was watching some parkour videos, which is such a unique. If you're not familiar with parkour, it's a useless skill set where you jump around on objects in the wild. It's not. I don't know why people do. It's a weird hobby to get. It's a weird thing to get good at. It's basically the equivalent of being like, I'm really good at the yo-yo. And you're like, yeah, nobody really cares. Why would you invest time in that? And they're like, you know what? I just, I don't know why. How do you even get into yo-yo? I feel like you would get into yo-yos and become really good. You're just like the first birthday present you remember getting. You're like, I was 6 years old and I got a yo-yo and I had no other toys. And I just was forced to become proficient at an object that nobody cares about. That's kind of the same thing as parkour. I guess you don't need to be gifted anything. You don't need a yo-yo. You don't need like an it's not like a lot of other sports. You're just jumping around on playgrounds and stuff. Which is the least, I mean, I guess being really good at yo-yos probably. I don't know. That's a toss up. What do you guys think? What is less attractive? being really good at yo-yo or being really good at parkour. I don't think any. I don't know what lady would look at those and be like, "Yo, my boyfriend is the man." Okay, yeah. Can your boyfriend cradle the baby? What I can't remember the yo-yo terms. Yo, can your boyfriend do a little spinny thing with the yo-yo? I don't think so. My boyfriend will beat up your boyfriend. Same with like parkour. Like what lady is like, oh my gosh, he just did a flip and hit his head on a handrail. That's so attractive. Did you see that? Like he's bleeding from his head, but like the effort was really cool. Yo, he jumped off a balcony and he balanced on a little beam. Can your boyfriend do that? I don't think so. It's a very strange thing to get proficient at. It's one of the, I mean, there's a million of those things where like even when you're the most proficient ever, it's still kind of like, yeah, this is kind of weird. But let's say, I mean, most people never get to the full proficiency. But on the climb up, you just look so foolish. It's very funny. I mean, you have to like not care at all. You have to commit so hard because most stuff, like if you're pursuing a regular sport or hobby, whether that's golf or soccer or really, I mean, anything, you can be really bad, and maybe it's not like a public thing that people see, or it's just like it doesn't matter. Like if you're bad at golf and you go play golf with friends, nobody cares. But if you're that person at like the halftime shows for sporting events where you're balancing on something and you're juggling and you're like throwing plates and bowls balancing on top of your head, until you get unbelievably proficient at that, people are just like, you're insane. What is wrong with you? You're just breaking plates. That's actually very rude of you. Which I guess those people probably practice in private, which makes sense. But who knows? I got the burps, dude. That guacamole is getting me. I might have some of this tea. Okay, maybe that'll help me speak a little smoother. Oh man, that was very hot. But yeah, a little update on last week, guys. I know I talked. I got some feedback from people, and they said too much ant talk. So I'll try to keep it. I'll try to keep it less. But man, if you didn't listen last week, I had an ant issue going on where I saw a couple ants in my apartment. I live on a garden level apartment. Live in a garden level apartment, so I'm like beneath the dirt. I'm right on kind of the windows or where the sorry, my nose is like running. It's running. Where's it running to? The microphone. Okay, wow. We're about 0 for 7 on jokes and riffs so far, but you know what? That's about the average for me. So we're right on track. But I live in a garden level apartment, and so some ants were coming in, and so I put some bait traps out. And basically, long story short, that brought all the ants in, killed a lot of ants, but also now there's just a bunch of ants roaming around my apartment. So I had pest control come in, and they sprayed. And man, this is like basically every expert, like every I feel like the older I get, almost every quote unquote expert I deal with is not an expert at all. Like they're just dumb. And you know what? That makes sense because, you know, people probably see me do comedy and they're like, he ain't no expert. That's terrible. Or, whatever job that I'm in where I'm supposed to be the expert in sales, whatever. People are probably like, you don't know what you're talking about. It's like, you know what? You're right. I'm just faking it till I make it. But it is frustrating when somebody says something with like 100% certainty to where you're like, oh, okay, I trust this person. And then they're just a liar. Okay. And that's what this guy is a liar. The pest control guy, total liar. Um, what he did was he came in what was it? He came in on Monday. Yeah, I think it was on Monday. And he he came in and asked what was going on, and I was like, okay, so there's ants everywhere, and he's like, don't worry, I'll spray. This will knock them out. They're gonna take this back to the queen. The queen's gonna die. Like this will be dealt with. And I was like, okay, should you spray foam the areas where they're coming in so they won't come back in? He goes, this is gonna deal with the problem. You don't need any spray foam. It's totally fine. So he sprays and he goes, I said, like, are you sure this is gonna handle it, or are you gonna need to come back? And he goes, this is going to resolve the problem. He goes, don't worry about it. They're gonna be dead. They're gonna be gone. This will not be an issue anymore. He goes, if you still see ants on Friday, then let us know. But that's not going to be the case. And here we are. It's Sunday morning, and I have killed, I don't know, 458 ants since Friday. Since Monday, I've killed single-handedly maybe more ants than you legally are allowed to kill. Honestly, there's so many ants that have been killed by the little bait traps, but I've smushed. I mean, my life has been consumed by these ants for the last week. It's actually a bit of an issue. I just like sit on my couch and I scan the floors like I'm a lifeguard, like watching a wave pool. And then I just see them crawling everywhere. And I have these rubber Crocs, fortunately, which squishing them in the Crocs is a little easier because there's rubber. You can like wash them off. But dude, that's all I'm doing. I can't focus on any other task. I start reading. I read like half a page. I look up, I see another ant crawling, and I have to go smush it. Oh my goodness, dude. So, like legitimately so many. So many ants everywhere. And it's giving me like flashbacks to years ago when I had bed bugs. Where like which obviously they're different. Because with ants, like if you kill the queen, that's all you got to do. I think hopefully the queen has been killed and it's just like some leftover dumb ants that don't know what's going on and they're just roaming around, even though it's hundreds. Uh, but with bed bugs, like if there's one, I think they can self reproduce. What do you call it? They don't have to. It doesn't have to be like a male and a female. I think just like one can. What is it? Asexual. Whatever that's called, where you can just reproduce by yourself, whatever magic that is. Could you imagine, dude? That'd be wild. If humans, you just like, you just flex, you went Super Saiyan, and then you're like, kid, I made one right now. You just by yourself, just lay an egg like a chicken. And then some bigger species comes and takes that egg and eats it for breakfast. That'd be wild. You're like, wow, how rude is that? Anyways, it's with the bed bugs, it's like reminding me of that because again, even though they're not the same with bed bugs, if you see one bed bug, that means they can still reproduce, and that's what the ants feel like. You just keep seeing them over and over and over, and it's a discouraging feeling when you're like, is this ever going to end? Feels like a video game where they're just like respawning in the corners. And you're like, where are you coming from? I've killed 1,000 of your brothers and sisters. Why do you keep coming back? I don't want to kill you anymore. You're making me have to kill you. It's like a disappointed parent. You're like, you're making me do this to you. I don't want to do this to you. This is harder on me than it is on you. But that's been super frustrating. We'll see, man. They're all over the place, and it's been like really. I've been very paranoid because they're like crawling up in the kitchen, kind of like you'll see them roaming around some, and if they're like, hanging around in the poison, and then before they die, like roaming onto my plate and potentially into my food, I don't like that. I actually asked. I thought about that last time, or on Monday when the pest guy came through. And I was like, hey, some of them are getting like up in the kitchen. Is it okay if if I accidentally eat one of these, do I need to be worried about that? And he's like, no, it's fine. And it was one of those where they say that and you go, I don't know, man. I don't know if I believe you. I don't know if I believe you, And I don't know if I believe him. I've actually been very paranoid. I have a shake most mornings, and so every morning I use my Ninja blender, and then I have to like clean it, and then I put it in the little rack to dry, and there's all these pieces to it, and like it's just like, dude, if any ant crawled, I mean, they're so tiny too, so they're so hard to see, and if any ant crawled up into that, and I make a shake and just blend it up, it's like I'll never know. You're like, ooh, that was a chia seed, a poisonous chia seed. Which it is interesting. I'll say this and then I'll get off the ant topic because, like I said, I've gotten feedback. I pick fun at you guys for not providing feedback, but you guys do provide feedback. Mostly I didn't like that thing you did for most of the podcast, so I appreciate that, and I'll try to listen to it. This is the last thing I'll say on ants. Whenever you have a big issue like this, it kind of consumes you. I don't know if I feel like it's probably most people, but it has consumed me this last week trying to figure out what's going on. So I've done a lot of research and stuff trying to figure out, what's going on. And I've learned a bunch about ants that is knowledge that I don't need, nobody needs, but you just kind of find these things out in your pursuit of trying to resolve an issue like this. And I didn't realize, I mean, I'm trying to write a joke about it, and it's like, it's funny because ants have like antennas, and that's how they communicate. And I guess I maybe kind of knew that, but I didn't realize, like, I never thought too much about that. Not only ants, but a lot of different like I think lobster and shrimp, and actually most insects might have antennas. And I was trying to write on it. I didn't come up with anything super funny, but it is kind of interesting to be like, oh, wait, they're communicating through these little like antennas, which, I mean, that's basically the same thing as like radios that like technology that we have made is kind of just mimicking, I guess, what these organisms are doing on Earth, where they're like sending signals and communicating, which is interesting. And also a little, it was very interesting, actually. But I was trying to write a stupid joke about how you're like, oh, dude, they have these magic communicating antennas, but they can't watch a football game on CBS. Like, what? Why don't you use your antennas for something fun instead of digging a bunch of tunnels in the dirt? Anyways, that's all the ant stuff, guys. I'm gonna leave it at that. I will say, like I said, I've had coffee for the past week, and it has been good. I got a recommendation from a buddy, friend of the pod, Jameson. Jamco presents. Uh, he he's the type of guy who has very strong opinions about everything, which is I appreciate that. Honestly, like I drink coffee. I've had coffee most of my life. I'm a fan of coffee, but I'm not like an expert in like what to do. I mean, I wouldn't call myself a novice at this point. I've tried the different roast, the light roast, medium roast, dark roast. I prefer the light roast. I prefer a little more caffeine. I don't really like the typical Starbucks like overburnt dark roast. I've tried the ground coffee. I've tried the beans and grinding those. I've tried drip coffee machines. Like I've tried a lot of this stuff, so I'm not like a novice, but I'm also not like super well versed on what would you call it? Sommelier? Is that the? I'm not an expert. And Jameson, big coffee drinker, he is more of an expert. Has dabbled in a lot of these different local roasters and stuff. So he was giving some good recommendations about checking out some local roasting companies here in Denver. So I'm gonna try to. Sorry, I've got like the burp / hiccups, which is probably all that guac. I don't know. Having a bag of chips and guacamole as your first meal of the day, you might as well just go back to bed. It really is not recommended. But yeah, Jameson gave some good input. I'm going to check out some local roasters. I bought a bean grinder. That'll be coming in today or tomorrow. So ready to try out some new stuff. I've still got tons of that bulletproof coffee, but that's ground up already. and he was very adamant about um that not being as good. Which, you know what? I'll be honest. I Again, not an expert, not a novice, but not an expert. But also, that's a common thing you hear from people. It didn't. I wasn't like, no way. Like, I think it's obviously fresher to grind the beans yourself. So having people be like, give you a little nudge in directions. You go, hey man, stop. What are you, 18? Is this your first cup of coffee? You still putting vanilla creamer and sugar in there? Which a lot of people do. And I'm not. I like it. I like black coffee. Coffee with cream is like a treat for me, but I prefer the bold black coffee. But interesting, here, a little interesting since Jameson, we were playing some. I'll play Fortnite with a couple buddies, and we were playing the other night, and he was like, "You haven't mentioned my name on the pod. I listened to the pod. You haven't mentioned my name." And I was like, you know what? I appreciate that you listen, and I will shout your name out. And I'll say a little story, a little appreciation story for Jameson. Uh, Actually, it's funny. I've said this on the pod before. I don't know if I mentioned his name or gave any context to it, but when you do comedy, you just go through like so many levels of growing and learning and understanding how to write a joke and this and that. And in the beginning, you just like you stink. Most people stink, have no idea what they're doing. I was certainly in that boat. It was terrible. Didn't know what I was doing. Didn't know how to write a joke. And we we did this sketch video, Jameson, myself, and another comic in the area, Sammy, and it was a very fun experience. Like, it was fairly professionally done, especially compared to given the fact that I had never done a sketch video before. It was like pretty professionally done. We went through like all the writing the script and blocking, like planning out the video shoot, going to a venue like a brewery, and I mean doing the whole thing, the editing, everything. And during that process, I remember sitting down. We were like also working on just during that time frame, we were spending time going over the script and just getting together to plan that out. And we're also doing comedy at the same time, stand up. So I remember sitting down with Jameson, and he was like asking me about my writing process. And I didn't really have one at the point. I was just write a lot, but I didn't really know what I was doing. You're just writing a bunch of stuff, trying a bunch of stuff. And some stuff maybe would get a few giggles, and I didn't really know why structurally. But he said something that people say all the time, but it a lot of times you hear input and you just don't take it to heart until like you have to get to a certain point to where you're willing to listen. And people would say all the time, they'd say underline the punchlines. Like, write out your stuff, underline the punchlines, and then trim the fat from there. Like, if there's a bunch of sentences in between the underlined portion, you need to get rid of a lot of that. How can you get as fast as possible from one punchline to the other? And I was like, I don't know, 13 or 14 months into comedy at this point. I don't know. I don't know why I talked about comedy like a newborn baby. I'm about 28 months into comedy right now, Uh, but he basically, we sat down and he was going through his process of things, and I had my notebook there, and he's like, underline the punchlines. And I remember going through my material and just being like, I don't have punchlines. Like, that was truly a level up moment for me to be like, I don't have. I think because in my head, I was like, I'm getting laughs sometimes, but it was only open mics that I was doing at that point, and you kind of build a set that may just get laughs from the back of the room, just from comics there, by saying wacky stuff, by being like really weird. And a lot of that stuff, if not all of that stuff, does not translate to laughs from a normal crowd of just people, normal people that aren't comics. And so that was a huge learning experience for me to then kind of be able to change my brain to go, you need to write punchlines. you're assuming that you're getting laughs off of these like weird, not punchline type things, just acting weird, or I don't know, doing these weird things where my brain thought I was doing punchlines, but when I went pen to paper to underline, there weren't consistent punchlines. Um, and so that was there's a little story. Appreciate that, Jameson. Um, but yeah, I've used that. I mean, just doing comedy, you level up more and more and more. And I've been working on some new stuff, and it is funny. I mean, even to this day, like I'll underline the quote unquote punchline, and then you reread it or you try it on stage, and you're like, oh, that's not even close to a punchline. But that's part of the process. Just failing a bunch and then just keeping at it. It really is a mental illness. You're like, I'm just going to say stuff that stinks most of the time, but that doesn't matter. I just, once in a blue moon, something doesn't stink. And it makes me feel good inside. Okay. So that's where I'm at. I'm trying some new jokes out. I got a new joke about, I think I was telling you guys about just getting injured, getting older, and hurting my knee and my shoulder. And, oh man, I did it. I went to open mics Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and like really got it memorized and felt pretty, honestly, I felt pretty good about it. I was like, oh, okay, this is structured. It's not incredible, but like, I think if I deliver it in a silly, fun way, it's just the newest thing I'm working on. And I did it, for a show on Friday night that I was hosting, and the crowd was pretty good. Like I hosted, so I started out, and the crowd was pretty good. They were responding well to the other jokes that I was doing that are worked out. And then I sandwiched that new one in, and boy, did it die a horrible death. Oh boy. Nothing more humbling than like an honest crowd that's like, "Hey, we are having fun. We are laughing, but if the joke's not good, we're not coming with you." And you go, "You know what? I respect that." And now I know that that joke needs some work or just needs to be on the back burner or whatever the case is. Need to edit it or cut it, whatever it is. But that's okay. Good to get that input, and just good to kind of work through some new stuff, even if it's not working super well. It's just part of the process. Just keep at it. Um, but I've got that. I've been working on a joke about ants, which, like I said, I won't talk anymore about the ants. But working on a joke on that. Once I get it worked out a little bit more, maybe share a little bit on here. Working on. I was working on some dentist and doctor material since I went to the dentist for the first time in like 4 years recently. I was like, let me write about that. It hasn't been great, but again, just gotta keep at it. It's so easy to like write something and then just try it once or kind of look at it and go, I'm not really happy with that, and just scrap it. Which it's okay to scrap stuff sometimes, but I think it's also important, and I try to do this as much as I can, which is like, hey, try to get that joke, or whether it's a joke or not, and just try to get it to a point. Just try to make it into something. Try to develop it, make it the best that you can. And maybe the best that you can make it is still not good, but at least try to finish the product. So then when I look back in the future at these jokes I've worked in the past, I have at least a quote unquote finished product that maybe I can build from versus just a bunch of chicken scratch that if I look back 6 months from now, I'm like, oh, that's too chaotic to even go through. And then maybe there's a nugget in there, but you're just like, I don't even have the time to find that nugget. So just trying to like make it into the best, you know, formed out, developed thing that you can. So I'm trying to do that now with the dentist. I'm trying to combine it with it was never really a bit. It was just a funny thing that happened that I think I can add on just with a experience I had with a doctor, a doc in the box, whatever you call it, urgent care. Went to one of those. It was here in Denver. It was probably like 2019, 2020, so 4 or 5 years ago. I was I was having some chest pain. And look, this happens once every 5 years. I just get like, whether it's a little chest tightness or whatever thing it is, whatever ailment it is, I just start spiraling in my head. And I'm like, oh, like last year it was oh, I think I have blood clots. I convinced myself that I had blood clots. But it was more so just I wasn't eating healthy and wasn't in a healthy routine. And mentally, I was just spiraling over little miniature things. I did not have blood clots. I just felt a little tingle in my arm. And then 24 hours later, after I thought about every potential possibility of how I could die from a tingle in my arm, I'm like, I have blood clots. This is, this is the end, I guess. And then at that point, it's like, let me just go to the doctor and have them go, "You're dumb. You're an idiot." And I go, "Okay, here's $50. I feel better now." But yeah, I was having some chest tightness, and I went into the urgent care, and I told the doctor, and I swear to God, I told him that I was having some chest tightness, and he goes, "Maybe you just have to fart." That those are the exact words he said to me. I'm not changing it for comedic effect. That's what he said to me. And so I'm trying to make a joke out of that. How it's just like, yeah, that is the most unprofessional thing I've ever heard. I'm trying to write like a tag to it to make like a similar goofy equivalent. I think the one thing I wrote down, it's not. I think I tried it once. It's not good, but I just need to find a different phrase. But basically, being like, "What's next? You're gonna see my blood pressure and be like, holy guacamole," which you can judge. That's not funny. I realize that's not funny, but something like equally unprofessional to hear from a doctor. I'm trying to find out, just try to make that equivalency, see if that'll work. But yeah, I still remember that. I mean, I've had a deep distrust for doctors for a long time, stemming from the Lyme disease days where I just went to dozens and dozens of doctors and they were like, "You're fine. It's in your head, this and that." And ever since then, I have not respected or trusted doctors, which, you can have your opinion about that. I understand that doctors, it's like they're needed, they're important, they're not stupid for the most part, but just the system that we're in is very much like a, hey, I've got another patient in 6 seconds, so here's a pill. And I don't appreciate that. That's not, I think most of the ailments that we have here as a country are due to just not living a healthy lifestyle. And I think most of it, I'm not saying all of it, I'm not crazy. There is a need and a reason that we have prescription drugs and things like that. But for the most part, it's just capitalism at its worst, which is just big pharma just making band-aids for everything. And then they're like, hey, here's a pill for this, but then you're going to have these side effects, but don't worry, we have pills for that. And those will have side effects, but don't worry, we have pills for that. So now you're on 12 pills, and it's just like, I don't agree with that. I think most stuff is like, hey, if you eat healthier and like get sleep and exercise, just back to the basics, you're going to be 90% better in all aspects of your life. So anyways, this is coming out on whatever day it is, the day before Thanksgiving. Some of you guys might be listening on Thanksgiving, so happy Thanksgiving. It's a good time of the year. I don't know. Let me know in the comments. What do you guys have planned this Thanksgiving? What is your typical Thanksgiving? What do you usually do? I'll tell you guys a few Thanksgiving stories, or just typical things that I've done in the past. Honestly, I was trying to think about like what Thanksgiving traditions did I have, and honestly, I can't even remember too much. It's not that I can't remember, but I don't remember like specific years, which is probably fine. But also part of me is like, is my brain rotting and not working anymore? Which, I've already come to terms. I think that is the case. But um, basically what I used to do, so I grew up in Southwest Virginia and had all of my mom's side of the family were like farmers. And so every Thanksgiving, I don't know what years, but it felt like pretty much very young, early years to maybe all the way through high school, maybe for the most part. We would go up to Oh man, oh, where was it? I can't remember the city. It was kind of like an hour outside of DC, but not a big city, like a small area. I can't believe I'm blanking on the name of the city. But either way, it was my my grandfather's brother, all of his family and relatives. And so it was a bunch of cousins and all, first, second, third cousins, kind of probably the biggest family reunion type gathering that I did in the past. Like usually it was direct family or not necessarily direct family, but like, okay, aunts, uncles, grandparents. This was a bunch of like second, third, whatever cousins, and we would go up there, and it was on a farm, a farm I think where they made cheese, or no, that was one of the cousins that would come to the gathering make cheese, but it was a big farm area, and bunch of people. All I remember is playing football in the open grass with a bunch of people, and that was always fun. As a kid, when you're playing like football, I was never allowed to play tackle, but even just playing football, just getting out there and running and seeing that football in the air and running for it, trying to catch it, man, that was a lot of fun. But we would do that, and I remember just going inside and just like probably begging for somebody to turn a TV on so there's a football game. A lot of Thanksgiving, a lot of growing up. It was family gatherings, but the TV was not a huge part of that gathering. Which nowadays, like the thought of going to a Thanksgiving or whatever, or just whatever hangout and being there for like all day, and the TV not kind of like being in the background at least, is kind of a foreign concept in 2024. But uh, that was all. I don't have a lot of specific memories of that, but I think after that during my college years, I think we would mostly meet at my aunt and uncle's, which was like in between where my college was and where my parents lived. It's like 45 minutes for each of us. And we would go there, and a lot of people talk about, like what's the good food. I It was very traditional food. I mean, growing up kind of in the South, this thinking of Thanksgiving is one of those times where not just Thanksgiving, but it's definitely a big day where you get some more southern. That's not even true because Thanksgiving food is pretty equal across the board for a lot of people. But basically, I'm kind of I'm going on all these different tangents. What I'm trying to say is a lot of people will ask me, not just for Thanksgiving, but just like what's the food that you grew up on? And because I've been on this specific diet because of the Lyme disease and this food sensitivities and stuff like that, I a lot of times I forget like what I grew up on, like what the traditional Southern food I grew up on was, um, because it's just been so long since I've had it. But a lot of it was like not a lot of pies, but pie was certainly a big part of it. Cobblers, a lot of good desserts that I very much miss now. But I do remember. I think obviously pie is huge for Thanksgiving around the country. It's not like a Southern thing, but man, some good pies. We have pumpkin pie. My uncle very much liked making the meringue pies, which I'm not as huge of a fan of. I love a good pumpkin pie is great. I love a good apple pie, a peach pie. I mean strawberry pie. All the derby pie, chess pie. Man, the meringue's not like a key lime pie or a lemon meringue. Not as big a fan of. I mean, they're still delicious, but not as big a fan. Same with what is the like a chocolate meringue, kind of a custardy chocolate with meringue on top. It's not bad, but I prefer the others. Cheesecake. That's not really a Thanksgiving thing per se, but big cheesecake fan as well. Haven't had that in ages. Um, but yeah, A lot of kind of things that we would do on a year to year basis. When you don't think about those things for a while, sometimes you're like, oh yeah, I forgot we did that. We would one tradition we had, haven't done it in a while, but we used to do it every year. We'd make apple butter at my grandparents. I think it was like end of October when we do it. So it was more like Halloween time frame. But that was always fun. That was something that growing up, a lot of stuff I didn't appreciate like I should have just because you're a kid and you're like, I want to just go play video games at my friend's house this weekend instead of, going wherever with my family to do this apple butter thing. But it's as I got older, and especially now, like we haven't done it for a while, and I very much would like to go do it again. Because it used to be an every year thing, then it was an every other year thing, and now I think it's been a while just because we would make the apple butter on my grandparents' farm, and they've since here recently they've sold the farm area. So I think we're gonna do it at my uncle's, but it's just logistically some things have changed. But it was always fun. That was also like a big gathering of cousins and relatives. And if you're not familiar with apple butter, very good. It's a very southern thing, I believe, but it's basically you have applesauce and then you cook that down. We had this massive, I don't know what the size was, but it's this big pot cauldron. Um, I mean that like a person can fit in. It's like a massive thing. So there's a ton of applesauce in there, and you just cook it over a fire, and you have to stir it so it doesn't like burn. So there's this massive stirring stick, and from about 4 a.m. to noon for 8+ hours, maybe a little bit longer than that, we just had people taking turns. We're in this old barn that's been around for 100 years. We're stirring this pot. People are drinking coffee, chatting. Honestly, it's one of those things that when you're younger you don't appreciate. But stuff like that, truly, I mean, that's like a good representation of the human experience, where you're like, hey, we're doing this tradition that involves community and food and I don't even fully know what the word fellowship means. Not that I don't. That's I usually heard that in religious stuff. There's no religion involved in this, but just like bringing people together and you haven't seen for a while, family. Yeah, it is. That is something that I think is important in the human experience, and yeah, hopefully get to do that again here soon. But that was always good. It's very good. Basically, it cooks down the applesauce, and then you add, and then so that the color turns from like applesauce color to like a brown, and then you add a bunch of sugar and cinnamon and nutmeg and a couple spices there, and then we would can it at the end, and like I mean, just like 20 families would have like 20 pints or quarts or whatever the jar size is of apple butter, and we'd use that throughout the next year or two or whatever. We just have literally we would have it out for almost every meal. My mom would make biscuits for most meals, and we'd have apple butter on it. You could put it on bread, biscuits. I mean, it's also bread. Yeah, any bread type product. It's very good, super good. Another thing I haven't had in years because of my diet restrictions, but it's very tasty. If you haven't tried it, I will say this: homemade apple butter, very different from store-bought apple butter. And I mean that's the case with most things that you make, but it's the homemade apple butter, very very good. Store bought apple butter, I've never been a big fan of it. It tastes kind of chemical y, and not a huge fan of it. So if you know me, ask me. I'm going home for Christmas, I believe. Maybe I'll grab some apple butter, bring it back if anybody wants to try it. If we I don't even know if we have any at the moment. Anyways, that's the Thanksgiving stuff. Hope you guys have a good. I don't know my plans. I don't know my plans for this Thanksgiving. We'll find out. But a couple quick things here, and I'll end the pod for this week. But making some progress on the book Children of Time. Been reading again. It's sci-fi space travel type thing. It's getting very interesting. I'm like 400 pages in, and I think it's like 650 or something. So, gotten to a point. It's been very interesting. It's the human race. Earth is kind of like no longer viable, and the human race is now searching for a new planet to keep the race going. And yeah, I won't go into all the details, but it has been good. It's been interesting. I Once I finish that, I think I've got another sci-fi book I'll read. So it's been good. Feels good to kind of chip away and read a page turner. I've said it before, reading books where you're like, I've just gotten in the habit of just reading whatever book I open. And a lot of books just aren't great. You know what? Very similar to what I talked about with jokes. A lot of jokes are all right, aren't great. But here's the difference. I don't publish those. Okay. If I record a special, which I would like to do here in the next year or so, those won't go in the special. But some authors, they just publish it, dude. Which also, look, I'm one person. Obviously, other people may like it. My brain, there's just certain people who write a certain way that doesn't connect with my brain. And I don't think that's because they're writing in a bad way. I think it's genuinely just my brain, whether it's my vocabulary not being good enough, or maybe they're from England instead of the U.S. Like the writing style is a little different, and my brain just like struggles. I've talked about it before, but C.S. Lewis, what are you doing, dog? He's a popular author. The books I read from him, I mean, it was tough. It was tough. I couldn't finish. I can't remember the series. It wasn't Lion, Witch, and the Wardrobe. It was whatever other trilogy he wrote that was supposed to be popular. I didn't get it. Anyways, got some fun upcoming shows coming up tonight, which will have already passed, obviously, once this comes out. But I'm headlining a show in Colorado Springs at Oscar Blues. Looking forward to that. Got to write a set list for that. I think I'm doing 30 plus. It's been a minute since I've done that chunk of time, but looking forward to that. Doing a couple more Don't Tells next week. And then, I forgot to even talk about the Don't Tell shows I did. I'll do a quick overview of the Don't Tell shows I did this weekend. Did a Friday, Saturday. One was at a fitness spot, and one was at a brewery. And they were both very fun shows. I kind of go back and forth sometimes. I'm like, is the comedy bubble about to burst? Are we in a place where, the ebbs and flows of everything in life, including comedy, we're kind of on a high now with the power of social media and clips and reels. It feels like we're due for a comedy bust. And so I'll have a couple shows in a row where the crowd's not great or this or that. And you're like, is this the beginning of the end? Which not the end of me doing comedy. I'll stick through it no matter what. This is what I want to do as a career. I love doing it. All of the parts, even the parts that kind of stink, like the behind the scenes stuff. I still love that. I mean, it's great. But then this weekend, I mean, both shows were great. So it's just kind of the typical up and down. But the show at the fitness center on Friday was super fun. Every time we have it there, it's a great crowd, and it was no different. That was the place where I was talking about. I did that new joke about some of the injuries that I have, and they were like, I did it in the middle of my set, so I started out with some tried and true jokes. They were laughing, they were having a good time, and then I went into that joke, and I mean, it just ate it, dude. It's kind of funny. Like I said, at this point, I don't get super rattled. I mean, you do jokes that don't work. You try to fit in new jokes, I've done comedy thousands of times. You get used to it, but it is funny when you're like, all right, here it comes. You guys are on board. Maybe the momentum will carry me through. And they're like, we don't like this one, and we're letting you know. So that was good input to get. But that was a very fun night. The Saturday was at a brewery. It was the first time at this new brewery space, and I was kind of wondering I walked in and was like, what's this gonna be like? But the staff was like super helpful. They rearranged the entire room. They closed the brewery down and they moved all the tables to be like a very good setup for the comedy show. Cut the lights off, had the spotlight on, and the crowd was. I mean, it was a very fun show. Had a good time. Had I was gonna try a different new joke there, but decided not to. It was first time doing it at this venue. Wanted to just do the good jokes and keep the show momentum moving forward. So that's what I did. It was a good time. Again, both of those shows, it's good to hang. I've been hanging out with just buddies after the show and talking for a while, and then I'll get home, like I said, a little later, and then I'll eat, and then it's like 1 a.m. and I'm going to bed with like food in my stomach, and that's throwing me off a little bit when it comes to the routine and getting up and being like, I'm ready to attack the day. You're like, ugh, I'm ready to get this macaroni and cheese out of my stomach. All right, that was a little suggestive for a clean pod, but you guys get it. If you're still listening now, that's incredible. But I'll end it there. I've got like I said, some more don't tells coming up this week, and a busy December. I got a lot of stuff coming up. Check out the dates in the bio on my Instagram. Again, I say it every time. Let me know if you have any book recommendations. Let me know if you want me to change things up. If you like hearing about certain stuff or don't like hearing about other stuff, let me know. Appreciate the feedback. But other than that, I'll end it there. Appreciate you guys tuning in this week, and I'll see you guys again next week.